Elevate,
the podcast series by Elevation Barn.
If you look at why 96% of businesses fail in the first place, having to have a great idea is like a prerequisite that we all feel is required. And I totally nonsense that. I said, you don't need a great idea. You want to copy an idea that's proven. Having an idea and running a business are two completely independent things. Find something that people need, right? Sounds standard. People always go, yeah. And I said, did you ever do anything you needed to do, or did you do what you wanted to do? Like, oh, right. So stop telling people they need it because they don't care. Oh, I heard of that before. I said, great, I'm glad. Did you do it? No. Okay, so the three most dangerous words in the English language, I know that. That's what I really want people to go back and rethink. Okay, you might know that, but actually, do you do it? Have you done it? You would be saving thousands per month. You could live in an incredible lifestyle just by having one of these simple things and offering to people what it is that they want to buy. And you don't have to be core and central. You don't have to come up with this genius idea. Find the best expert, see what they recommend, do it, see if it worked. And you start each day by reminding yourself, where do you want to be in your relationships, your earnings, your health, your investings, your networks, your knowledge, your fun at the end of this quarter? And that's tied to a bigger goal that you've set up at the start of the year. And then you have your habits underneath that. And that was the whole point, is you only have to focus, just do it today. Because I'm obsessed with this topic, because it really is. If you can just get focused on these small little habits every day, everything changes.
We all crave for more clarity of purpose in our lives, understanding how we can be more meaningful in the lives of others. But to be this, we need to understand ourselves first. Elevate helps us to reflect on our lives through the stories of our peers who have explored and discovered the hacks to elevate what's important and stand aside of what's not. In these episodes, we talk with leaders from all walks of life, sharing their stories so you can elevate yours. Please subscribe and join us, explore your wisdom from these stories with others, and join us in the barn to unite with new peers doing something of their own to elevate their importance. You'll be in great company. All right, so here we go. My guest today on Elevate is someone I've admired for many years, a person who has built a global following by challenging one of the most deeply ingrained and antiquated systems in our lives: how we learn, how we earn, and how we define success. Paul Mahoney is an Irish entrepreneur, speaker, and founder of RETHINK Academy, where he helps thousands of people explore new ways of generating income, often outside traditional careers, through digital business, personal branding, and online education. He's also the creator of the programs like Financial Freedom and the author of books including Rethink Your Potential, The Modern Wealth Blueprint, and the Financial Freedom Program in print itself, focused on mindset, entrepreneurship, and financial independence. Alongside that, he's built a significant global audience across millions on Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and live on stages around the world, which is where we met. Through his programs, content, and speaking, he's become one of the most visible voices in the movement towards financial independence and alternative education. But what I look forward to in this conversation, interestingly enough, is what Paul has built. It's the questions it raises about what actually works, what's sustainable, and ultimately what success really means once you've achieved it all. Paul, welcome to the barn.
Thank you. Well, great to be here. Excited to be here.
And just for those watching on our YouTube channel, Paul is actually on a treadmill, which he has walked 17,000 miles or something in the last few years. But while I sit here feeling fat, he's burning calories quite enviably. So
I think it's proven now that if you're sitting with a beautiful view, it burns a lot of calories too. So you're good, Will.
Yeah, I'm doing good, but enough about my wife. All right. So before we get going, I mean, when we met at the Genius Summit in Bali, and you were talking about this financial freedom. You were talking about the power of currencies, the changes in market, what you should invest in, what you shouldn't, how you can approach these things. And when we chatted afterwards, I said how refreshing it was, your authenticity and how you approach the thing that is usually the biggest weight on most of our backs is our stability, our financial direction, where the world is going. But then we also touched on your background and where you've been in life. And I'd love to start there a little bit. Is just understand through your words, because you are so magnetic and you are a leading light for so many thousands, if not now millions of people. Who is Paul? How would you like people to see you versus, the guru or the elder or the finance guy or what makes you feel like, all right, I've got it across?
I am probably the carbon blueprint of what you should turn out like by following the system, and certainly up until 30 years of age. And let me explain that. Both my parents were teachers. Right. So if there's anybody listening to this and come from that background, I mean, there is nothing quite like it, right? Both teachers. So
That's heavy.
Teachers do not know the difference between teaching and parenting. Right? There's no class on, oh, by the way, the classroom ends when you get home. It was always about academics, always. So, I mean, without not even joking, but like Santa Claus used to be sent my report card, right? I mean, this was my Santa's letter was like, how good did you do this year? So and I know they weren't thinking about that, but man, like that built such a connection of the importance of significance from an early age, that if you weren't academically good, you weren't going to be loved, which, that's not the intention, I don't believe, but certainly that's how I felt.
Was it a happy childhood? Did you feel happy?
Happy, very happy, yeah. But felt I had to prove myself through the classroom. That was always the true measure. And to this day, I'm all about, numbers and being able to measure through metrics. And that was a definition of how good of a child you were. I would say it was how you did academically. And like I said, I don't think they saw it that way, but that was just their lives. They were surrounded by results and how kids were doing nonstop. So, I went to college, and because that was the plan, right? You were meant to go and get a permanent job, if you might remember those, for 40 years. So I literally, and you'd probably enjoy this because I know you enjoy a pint of Guinness, but I literally took the job for the first company that came to our university. They were giving away a free pint of Guinness if you gave in your resume. And I did. I got the job. And I ended up working there for a decade. Fantastic company.
Was it Guinness?
No, but I actually did work in Guinness. Funny story, as my student placement. My first job, professional job, was helping in the automation of the Guinness plant in St. James's Gate in Dublin. Sounds very proficient. I knew absolutely nothing when I went in. I mean, the first thing I was shown was how to use a coffee machine. He said, that's a good skill to have. His name was Fergal. It was very good. And I remember I said, can you go down and check this valve? And I said, I literally didn't know what a valve looked like. Even though I was studying industrial biochemistry, I knew on the last day of that, I took off my lab coat. I was like, well, I won't be doing this again. I enjoyed college, but I was like, that's not for me.
Were you a rebellious child because of those pressures of your parents, or a good boy, or were you, what was the ecosystem? And were you surrounded by siblings that had to go through this to be able to get through it?
An older sister and a younger brother and a younger sister. So family of 4.
Oh, wow.
My older sister was the rebellious one. So I was the one that was the antithesis. Yeah. So I was, I remember my friend's mom used to come visit us, and she took me aside one day and said, Paul, what do your parents say to you before I come? And I, what are you talking about? Like she couldn't get over how quiet we were, how placid we all were. That was just how we were brought up. Very disciplined, but not in a fearful way. It was just how we were. I mean, they were both from country backgrounds, and you just didn't mess with your parents. You just didn't do that. I was definitely been kind of, the plan was they wanted me to get a PhD, really, I think. Which I was offered at the end of 5 years in college, and I decided, no, I just had enough. I needed to get out and get into the real world. And I worked in Boston Scientific, which is a medical device company, fantastic company, for 9.5 years. And in the meantime, economically, Ireland went through something called the Celtic Tiger, which we all thought was great. Nobody thought that tiger might be a dangerous animal. So if you were in your 20s at that time, it was kind of like the Wolf of Wall Street in Ireland for that decade. There was money
Right.
just been handed out.
Just
So
everywhere,
yeah, it was everywhere. And I bought 2 houses at the worst possible time in the Irish economy because you didn't need any money for it. They gave you all the money. And overnight, they were worth less than, they dropped by about 30 to 40% within a 6-month period. And suddenly I woke up to, I'm trapped. Right, a mortgage, comes from the word the Latin word mortir, meaning death. I was like, oh my God, I need to live twice to pay back for these 2 mistakes. And that was actually the driving point for me to look at an alternative approach, because I realized, like, with everything I've done in my corporate career, I was better off financially when I was 9-10 years of age than I am at 30 years of age. And that was when the search began.
Interesting. And what was the catalyst? What was while you're hunting, what were the triggers, and who were the triggers that then inspired the movement?
Sure. Well, so internally, it was a sense of I've done everything perfectly. I've got the jobs, I've got the promotions. I have an MBA at this stage. The work get paid for an MBA. I was the youngest ever director in Boston Scientific at that time at 30 years of age. But if you check my bank accounts, I was like seriously in debt. So I went to an event in Dublin, in Ireland, in February 2009. And it was quite funny, actually, because I'm smiling already, because there were American speakers, all American speakers. Clearly, they hadn't been to Ireland. They did not understand that we're just born cynics. Like, we don't believe you. We just don't believe you, especially if an American accent. So they were talking about how they were making millions on the internet. We're like, oh, for fuck's sake, come on, who do you think we are? One person said, tell the person next to you they're awesome. We're like, no, we're not going to do that. And the next person tried to get us to stand up and massage the shoulders of the person next to you.
Oh,
like, are you serious? We don't touch our own family. Yeah, I mean, why do you think we have alcohol problems? Because that's the only way we can procreate. So it was literally this, like, the third speaker, thankfully, was taking note. Everybody had their arms folded. And he said, look, here's the problem as I see it. He said, you think we're here to brainwash you. He said, the irony of this whole scenario is you're so brainwashed. When a train of truth comes at you, you don't even notice. He said, let me explain. He said, I'm a high school dropout. You believe it's so ingrained in you that wealth is connected to qualifications. Or he said, as I put it, he said, you measure wealth in letters, the amount of letters you accumulate after your name. BSc, BA, MA, MSc, MA. I said, oh my God, that's exactly me. I am measuring my wealth by all these letters. He said, I found out years ago that a much more accurate measure of wealth was measuring numbers in your bank account. I said, oh, fuck. Suddenly somebody beautifully, eloquently said what I had been thinking for years. And anytime you brought it up,
my head.
Your friends are like, what's wrong with you? Like, what, like, you should be so happy, right? You've got a car, you've got a house, you've got a rental property, you've got a great job. And in many ways, in many respects, all the measures by which we had been brought up to be successful, I had reached, but I was massively in debt, and I was going to have to pay back for this for the next 40 to 50 years, and you weren't allowed to talk about it. It was a taboo subject. So what do? You go drinking at the weekend, and let's forget about it and let's go again. So that was a massive change for me, because I did something I'd never done before. Was I moved off of traditional education, which it was always after my next qualification, which went back to my childhood. You'll be loved more if you're more significant, if you have more qualifications. And I actually ended up buying 3 programs at that event from 3 complete strangers from America, 10,000 euros. I stuck on my work credit card, which I didn't have at the time. And during that journey, I'll cut the story short, really, I ended up going to see Tony Robbins. My boss paid for it. I was working on my leadership skills. Now, talk about a shock. I didn't even check out who this guy was on YouTube. He was just recommended by all these speakers. So I went to see him on St. Patrick's weekend in New York City, well, actually New Jersey, March 2009. And when he came out on stage, and it was like the Pope, the Dalai Lama, Kim Kardashian, all in one body. Everybody just went insane. And he says, everybody, I want you to jump around like complete lunatics. And I started looking for the closest exit. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this, whatever this is. And I met another Irish guy. We bumped into each other. And I said, Jesus, what the fuck? He goes, I know, it's a cult. It must be. And I said, we should just go for a drink. And just as we were leaving, there was a couple of Germans there as well going, what is this? Like they were kind of feeling the Irish vibe. And then Tony said, look, you guys, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're going to be walking on fire tonight, right? You're going to burn. They're like, all right, fair enough, Tony. So we hung on for a bit. And within, I don't know how many hours of the brainwashing stuff, which was like brilliant, I had this profound moment when I went to the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and it's the weirdest thing. Never happened to me since or before. I just saw a different person looking back at me. I didn't know who it was. I was like, what has happened? And that night I texted my boss, which you're not meant to do, but I did. And I said, your services will no longer be required.
Wow.
Handed in my notice, but absolutely no idea what I was going to do. I was going to fake it till you make it. And I was going to live with passion. And all these things that turned out to be the blueprint to going broke. But I didn't know that at the time. But it was that first massive shift. Like it feels like up until that 30 years, it was like follow the narrative, see how it works out. And suddenly, okay, the person has changed. The direction is shifting to what, who knows. But man, I felt good about it at the time. I was definitely drinking the Kool-Aid.
That's amazing. So what do? You left there, you came back to Ireland, and then did you have you were still young, you weren't tied up then, you weren't a father, you weren't.
No, I was 30, I was single, I had a lot going for me. I had 2 mortgages, so I was tied down financially, all right. I had my exit interview 4 weeks later with my boss. He's like, what the, like, Paul, this is the second worst recession since the famine. I never forget when he said that. I was like, oh, like, all right, okay.
Yeah,
I
remember it all so well.
I don't really care about potatoes anymore. But he said, look, he just said something really beautiful. He said, some birds just weren't meant to be caged. He said, we all want to do this, but none of us have the balls to do it. So he said, best of luck. You know where we are if it doesn't work out. And man, I walked out of there full of the just 100% not wanting to work for the man. Entrepreneurship is for everybody. Like when I look back, I think, my God, how cocky and how misguided I was in so many ways. But I think you kind of have to go through that. So what I did was I had 30,000 euros saved from 9 years in my job, and I lost it all in the stock market within 6 weeks. Lost it all, the whole lot. Gone. That was faking it till you make it, right? I was like, oh yeah, I just need to make 3K a month. That'll match my salary. I knew just enough to be dangerous. And it's almost like the entire stock market contrived. That's why sometimes you have to, when you hear what Elon says about, is this the whole thing some kind of simulation? Because literally, for me to have lost that money, if you look at the stock market since 2009, April, May 2009, it has not dropped below that point since then. It's just gone up basically all the time since that exact moment, because I'm so grateful in retrospect that didn't work out for me, because I never really enjoyed it and I was only doing it for purely money's sake. So I basically had tail between my legs. I either had to go back to work to 3,000 employees in the same place and tell them, yeah, you were right, you should have stayed. Or I had to dust down these trainings that I had bought. And I was very inspired by one lady. I was going to the 3rd workshop that I paid for. At this point, I'd burned through my money. It was in London. I couldn't afford a hotel. Well, I had to get a train to my aunt's apartment in Arundel in the UK from central London, sleep on the floor, come back in the next morning to go to this workshop. And this lady was a guest at it. Millie Ponce was her name. And she was talking about how with a full-time corporate job, she was making £3,000 a month from Twitter. And that was it. I was like, okay, this is happening. I have all the time in the world. She wasn't selling her own products or services. It was the first time I was introduced to affiliate marketing. And I did something that evening. I happened to be sitting beside this guy who had created this software that basically banged out tweets every couple of minutes. And between what I'd learned that day and what he had, I had got some followers on Twitter. And basically the next morning I woke up and I'd made my first 2 sales online.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
selling a software that the organizer had recommended, which flashes your goals on your screen really quickly. It's called Subliminal Power. And it's meant to help reset your goals subconsciously. So, and literally the first 2 buyers I had were in New Zealand. So while I was sleeping in London, 2 people in New Zealand had bought from a tweet that I had sent out saying, I remember it was like people would rather, people's number one fear in life is public speaking. So people would rather be in the coffin than give the eulogy. And just a link to this software, which was, one of the things it could do was help you with fear of public speaking. And I made $48.20. And I swear to God, I felt like a millionaire. I was like, I've made money while I slept. I need to sleep more. I went into the workshop like a hero going, look at me. I made all this money. And that Mark Anastasi was the organizer, was just so, he thought it was hilarious. So he brought me up on stage to the group of 80 people and he said, tell everybody what you did. And I just literally walked through it. And I just remember Mark came up to me afterwards and he said, did you see the way they looked at you? And I was like, yeah, in awe. And he said, no, that wasn't all. He said, they believed they could do it because you could do it. And I was like, all right, there's kind of an insult hidden in there somewhere. He's like, yeah, not that hidden, but they totally resonate with you. Like they could tell you no technical knowledge. You literally just pressed a few buttons and you made money. And that became the progression from there. 4 months later, I was earning more from selling other people's stuff on Twitter than I was in a corporate career that I'd been training 30 years to get to. And I swear to God, every day for months, I was afraid it was going to stop. It was like I was institutionalized, like the Shawshank Redemption with your job. You're pee at the same time, poo at the same time every day. And you just felt that someday you're going to wake up and this would stop. Because that's how I've been brought up to think. And so that went 10K a month, went to 20K a month the next month. That went to 40K the next month. That went to 80K the next month, monthly.
Wow.
And that's when I started to get invited to speak on stage because it was interesting to see. It was almost the speakers themselves were shocked that this was working so well. But I was so naive, so green to the whole thing. I had no other expectation than complete success. So it's so funny when I look back. And people, I never carried the guru status. I just laughed it off always. It was like, look, I had a job and I was the anti-guru. Basically, I'd show a picture of myself as an alcoholic child and literally play myself off against the traditional. I was a drug dealer and, I dropped out of college and found Jesus, the standard, so I just basically made up my story, as a joke, and people just really like that. They're okay, finally someone that's
so authentic. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So where did it go from there? Why didn't you just keep scaling that and use the sort of model just to sit back and sit on a yacht?
A couple of things actually. I remember Mark saying to me, because he became my first mentor, he said, right, Paul, it took less than a year to make my first $1 million with my business partner. And then he said, it's a whole other story keeping $1 million than making $1 million. I was like, yeah, I'll worry about that when I make the $1 million. But he was right. I mean, I couldn't even tell you where it went mostly, but I know it wasn't on luxuries. It was kind of reinvesting back into businesses. It was, we did silly things looking back. We hired a massive team. We ended up having 35 staff. We had Regis offices that we'd rented in multiple places. We were managing social media services for other businesses. We were just running in all fronts, in all directions at the same time. And you realize how quickly you can pump through money, when you're paying all these other salaries. And it's funny because, a lot of people are drawn to the solopreneur lifestyle and, laptop lifestyle. But almost as soon as you get a taste for it, you're like, let's go big and let's go fast and let's scale really as quickly as possible. And not knowing at the time anything about the entrepreneur spectrum, not knowing that this is to be expected if you knew what you were doing, not knowing that you need to switch mentors at the right time. Well, we learned it all like piece by piece. But I would just say, when the company got to that size at one point, I just walked away because I said, this is literally what I walked away from in the first place, was corporation. Yeah,
you were building your mirror.
Yeah, having to show up, having to sit in your office, having to watch. I was like, oh my God, I'm not doing this again. So I kind of rethought the whole process at the end of 2015 and kind of started from scratch again and just said, right, let's go back to being me again. Yeah.
How did you rein in your ego? What was because it's addictive, right? I mean, why wouldn't you? You can see this in so many, living in New York for 25 years, people craved off it and they had no friends other than the people they were trying to trade with, the merchant element. Same here in Bali. There's a huge merchant economy of like, how do I survive and how do I go from here? How did you rein in your ego? How did you control and navigate it in the right direction?
You nailed it in your question there. You lived in New York for 25 years. You live in Bali. I lived in Ireland. You cannot expect to live. The fact we do not let anybody get above themselves. And at the time, you kind of resist it, and you call it tall poppy syndrome, etc. But man, it's the best form of sobriety for your ego that you can ever have. Is just live in Ireland without calling to arms everybody to come and move here. But it's a fact. It's like we've a great sense of humor. We've a great way of cutting people down to size. And it's not, I used to think it was a jealousy thing, but it's actually more of a, look, hey buddy, like don't think you're better than other people just because, right? You have more money or more land or more property or whatever it might be. It's like we all have a value here. We all bring something. It's that old fashioned community, small village side of things. Like we know where you're from. We know your people. Like certain things are more important than money. And for me, that was definitely it in retrospect, looking back. That was what reined that in. So I felt like, yeah, I go onto stage, I'm a celebrity. It was kind of a joke, almost like in this crazy tiny world, I was super famous, but I never marketed in Ireland. I never did anything in Ireland, very, very little, purposely, because it was like, oh, you don't want to be that guy.
So which guy are you when you're walking the street with the dog at home now, if you have a dog or a cat?
Dog, yeah.
What do people? Yeah, what do people say? Oh,
Nothing.
that's that they don't. They're
Nothing.
like,
I mean, what's kind of funny was
Guinness.
my dad was so happy when I wrote my first book in 2018. So that's 9 years later. Because finally,
right.
when people would ask him, "How's Paul doing?" You know, he said, "Fine." And what does he do? He didn't know what to say.
Read his
No,
book.
so he's an author. He's an author. Oh, thank God, I can put him in a box.
It's funny that because I always thought that my father was a headmaster, my stepdad, and I always felt that he wasn't interested. But he wasn't. He actually just wanted probably to keep that ego in check. And I always wondered, why don't you ask questions about what I'm doing in my career? Because he didn't know either. But that's just our roots, right? I guess.
Well, I think so. And I also feel, especially, I can only speak for my own dad, who's still very much alive and well. But
of course,
I think he felt that he never fully utilized he's the smartest man I've still ever met. And when I see Dr. John DeMartini, I always think of my dad. It's like very similar parallels in terms of being polymaths, unbelievable knowledge in different areas. And my dad taught a class, and John teaches the world as his classroom. You know, it feels like the opportunities just weren't there. Well, you know, it's not the same. The internet wasn't there, but like he went on in his 60s to a master's in software localization and stuff. So you could see he was super keen on this stuff, but it's just the timing, the opportunities wouldn't have been there in 1960s and 70s Ireland. So, but yeah, I think I for sure, like he was very proud on it. But at the same time, you need to think about the people you're speaking to. And, you know, if you're telling, how do you explain what somebody does in the new modern now? Yes, right. People have an idea. Go, is he an influencer? And you go, not quite. But at least that's a word that people now understand and acknowledge, and's made it into mainstream. But being an author would have been a big deal for Dad. He would have liked that. He was an English teacher, and for sure he's more comfortable in explaining what I do in that way.
Do you think you could have back then? Did you ever think you would become the teacher that you are now?
I was always drawn to teaching, but I knew I would never be a formal school teacher. I knew that. Kids were just getting completely out of control. I would say, growing up, for a long time, I did think I would be the professor, the PhD, because that was that was the ultimate success, until I realized, hang on, you don't get paid very much for this. And that kind of put pay to that for me, really.
Success in your parents' eyes or success in yours?
It was my parents, which was mine by default until I was probably 20, 21. Like I never really as a kid spent much time thinking about beyond. What's kind of funny, and my friend reminded me of it recently. I used to say to my friends in my 20s, and we'd be drinking and stuff, that I don't see myself living past 30. And in many ways I was right. Like that old life just ended. It just completely ended for me, and completely transitioned into this new world of, non-career oriented and just, taking more risks.
Funny. I never thought of that. I always used to say, I don't see myself living past 40.
No way.
But I
What
never
happened?
thought, and my dad being a headmaster, and I never thought about it being, that's a huge aha for me. I never thought it about living that life past 40. Oh, all right, I can wrap the podcast up now. I've got what I needed. That was great.
And what did you
That's
change at
amazing.
40? What did you change? Was there a profound moment?
I actually, it was a hugely profound moment. I ended up taking space after selling Attic to Dentsu and recalibrating how my life should be, what was important. And for me, it was about the power of story for people, not products and services as much, and the impact that we could have.
Wow.
So anyway, don't pivot. You're good at that. Don't pivot it back to me. I want to keep going. So where did it go from there? Amazing.
So yeah, in 2016 and so on, when I'd had some incredible moments. In 2015, I was on stage in the UK, and I'd made over £1 million in 90 minutes. And this was like,
wow,
unheard of at the time. Maybe 5 people in the world had ever done that. And I really felt like I was at the top of my game, the speaker. And I was really enjoying it. But the business had got too big, right? You could make that money and then it would just disappear. It's like, all right, this isn't the fruits of what, the labor. I was still working hard. I was traveling a lot, which I loved. I generally fly about 100 times a year, which I really, really enjoyed that. But 2016, again, looking back, when you think about it, it was kind of obvious. But that was actually when I decided, right, I want to build a new company. I want to kind of go out on my own again. That was the start of what's now the RETHINK Academy. But also I had my first child in 2016. So again, it was kind of a rebirth happening at that point. And then I wanted to be a lot leaner this time. I wanted it to be separate from me. I wanted to have a brand that, the company could be ran without me, have its own COO, etc. And then separately, I wanted to work on basically books, getting kind of content out, not content in like the social media sense, but just regardless of what your wallet was, that you could read something that would allow you to realize, oh my God, like finally someone has told me why I'm not healthy. I need to rethink my health, or I need to rethink my social media or my life or whatever it might be. And I started to build that up again. I mean, I'd built all my connections and networks at that point anyway, the previous business. But the RETHINK Academy was formed, and the essence of it was, up until then, I was teaching people how to make money with social media. But what I realized as I was getting older was, the most people think entrepreneurship is just business training. And in some ways, they're correct because that's how it's framed. But the reality is, having dealt with over 1 million entrepreneurs, usually their problems aren't lying in business skills. It's something else. And when I wrote Rethink Social Media, I didn't come up with the title. I was in a book boot camp, writing boot camp. And we spent half an hour one day, everybody helping each other with titles. And I didn't know what I was going to call it. And the person next to me said, have you ever thought of Rethink Social Media? I said, oh, no, that's a good one. Because I was thinking of social media profits and this stuff. It just didn't sit with me. And I loved it. I said, there's 7 letters, and I'm a big fan of acronyms. And I said, this actually could be, R is right niche, and E is evaluate avatar, and T is target right traffic, and H is help them for free, and I is immediate upsell, and N is nurture your list, and K is know your numbers. I was like, that's it. We've got our 7 steps. And then I got a trademark, and I said, you know what, this would be a great name for my company. And probably over a couple of drinks, a couple of months later, I was sitting there one night going, you know what? I remember now, I was finishing the book, and I was talking about these different areas of life, about physical health, finances, spirituality, social life, mental life, vocational, and fun. And I just said, I wonder, is there any way that sits with Rethink? And it just popped out as relationships, earnings, Tao, health, investments, networks, knowledge. And I was like, that's it. I said, that's what the academy is going to be, because where people fall down is not in the how-to part with business. It's these other things that are just coming back and flattening them again and again, whether it be relationship
Yeah.
never healed, whether they're getting into business to try and prove to a dead parent that they can make it, right? And just crazy stuff that so many of us, we live as this 5-year-old in a human grown-up body and haven't addressed some of these basics. And that's what the Academy became about was, okay, we want to open this to broaden the spectrum, that what's the point in having all the wealth in the world if you're not healthy or if you don't have a deeper connection, et cetera, et cetera. So it emerged from there. And I realized very quickly, I can't be the expert in all of these. I need a wealth of coaches and people who have a command of their areas and just connect those people to my audience. And I decided to be the guinea pig. So that I would test the stuff out of me. If it worked, we'd share it. If it didn't, we didn't. And that kind of became the new evolution of what I was doing.
Wow. And so what do people expect when they go into the Rethink Academy? Because, you know, you talked about the cult feeling, and then you don't want to be in a sales system. You know, people are suspicious of people trying to help them. And it's hard. I found when I moved from the ad world into the people world, it was a lot easier to sell shit to people they didn't need. But when you were trying to help them with something they did need, there's a huge suspicion. So how does Rethink operate to help prevent that feeling? And what would people expect to come out the other side with?
Yeah. So I would say to this day, 90% of people come into my world through online or in-person speaking events, where they're drawn into, as much as you say money's not everything, but that's what people are drawn to. It's like they see that as the immediate problem that needs solving. So they come into what we call our ROI, which is rethink your online income. So it's like, okay, how do you get the best return on the investment you're making in time on your smartphone at this moment in time? Because it's an easy hook for people, because everyone has there's more smartphones on the planet than people. You know, right now when people watching this are possibly listening or watching on that phone. What we're finding, and when I was touring with Robert Kiyosaki the last couple of years, you know, he was always kind of pushing me to front and center, because he said, look, I've been writing about assets for 40, 50 years, and I've always had to refer to property because that's all we could really connect with the masses about. And he said, I know, Will, you'll have heard this a lot of times, but sometimes people need to be reminded of it. When the way he explains that assets are anything that put money in your pocket, and liabilities are anything that take money out of your pocket. And then he picks up the smartphone. And he said, you know, what does this phone do for you? Does it put money in your pocket or take it out? And he said, I can guarantee you've never realized the weapon of mass destruction is you're carrying it around with you every day. It wakes you up in the morning. You carry it with you. It's the last thing in a world that's really divided. There's one thing we all do in common every single night. We all kneel down beside our beds, not to prayer, but to find our charger and plug in our phone. It's like we couldn't care less if our partner is charged in the morning or not, but you do not want to wake up with a phone that's not charged. And he's like, this has become, and it truly has become, people's compass, right? You decide where you're going based on what this tells you to do. So that's the hook that draws people in. It's like, well, look, you might as well take this from being your number one liability to becoming an asset. And let us share with you how to do this by not having to have your own products or not having to have your own services. And actually, the thing that anybody can expect, and I suppose this is the drum I beat more than anything, because back in 2016, I decided I wrote a book about kids and teaching them about money. And I remember my first newspaper interview, the journalist said, and why should people listen to you? I said, sorry, what? At that point, I'd made probably 40 million in our business. I said, you know, I didn't say that, but I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you're not qualified to speak about money. I said, wow. I'm hearing the guy that That's I was up until 30. He meant letters after my name. So instead of getting angry about it, I said, actually, I need to meet people where they're at. And I decided then to become qualified as a financial advisor to get those qualifications. And why that connects back to what I was saying there is when I wrote that book in 2016.
The financial freedom one?
Yeah. The first book for kids. And I didn't release it because of that newspaper article where he was like, you don't have the right to talk to my kids about money because I hadn't passed his exam, right? So I was like, there's a good one for the ego, you know, because you think you're up here and then you realize, but you didn't qualify. So then it's like, okay. I need to go. I need to go back and get qualified.
I'll do it.
Yeah, but and that's what I learned back then is you don't write a book for you. You write a book for the people who are going to read it. And if people see I'm a qualified financial advisor, they're going to feel more comfortable giving that to their 11-year-old. So the same with the smartphone is you got to go meet people at that space with, okay, they know how to use it. They'll tell you they're not technical. You tell them there's a sale on an Amazon. You watch it, how technical they are, right? Brown boxes arriving from heaven instantly, right? It's just a story we tell ourselves. No technical issues when we're spending it, massive technical issues if we have to go earn it. So I explain the process to people that if you just set up a simple online business, and this is the drum I beat, because I'm a qualified financial advisor, I'm telling you, everything shifts for you the moment you open that business, because up until that moment in time, you don't have any choice from a tax perspective. You're kind of screwed. Your money comes off the source, et cetera, et cetera. But the moment you open a simple online business, your SOB, you change your sob story. Oh, I don't know how to use the internet. Yes, you do. We rewrite the story. And the story is this. Now your heating, your Wi-Fi, your cooling, your electricity, your phone bill, your spare bedroom, all of these things are considered at least partially a cost of your business. You're going to save yourself thousands of dollars of real money every single year. So now your smartphone becomes an asset. And not only that, retrospectively, if you've been doing courses or trainings or mentorings or spending money on anything related to a business, that's the tax that you paid on that is highly likely owed back to you by the revenue in your country. And this really grabs people's attention, because the longer the wait, the less money they get back, and the less money they're going to save in the future. So it actually pays for itself in no time at all by just setting this up. And then you get, well, what am I going to sell? And, the standard questions that I would have had. I said, anything that you're buying online, anything, there's a high probability that you could also sell that. And they go, okay, I've heard of that. Is that affiliate marketing? And everybody wants to put it goes back to me, my dad, needing to be put in a box. Oh, I heard of that before. I said, great, I'm glad. Did you do it? No. Okay, so like T. Harv Eker says, the 3 most dangerous words in the English language. I know that. So that's what I really want people to go back and rethink. Okay, you might know that, but actually, do you do it? Have you done it? Because you would be saving thousands per month. You could be doing what Will is and living in Bali and, living an incredible lifestyle just by having one of these simple things and offering to people what it is that they want to buy. And you don't have to be core and central. You don't have to come up with this genius idea. In fact, if you look at why 96% of businesses fail in the first place, the 4 things really that you're taught, I don't know, will I remember the 4 now, but it's a while since I ran a workshop, but having to have a great idea is like a prerequisite that we all feel is required. And I totally nonsense that. I said, you don't need a great idea. You want to copy an idea that's proven, right? Because having an idea and running a business are 2 completely independent things. So you want to make sure someone else has a proven idea, or else if you're doing it, get an investor, use their money, but not your own. Find something that people need, right? Sounds standard. People always go, yeah. And I said, well, who did you ever do anything you needed to do, or did you do what you wanted to do? Like, oh, right. So stop telling people they need it, right? Because they don't care. You sound like a bully. People need to want it. Then there's a desire and it's going to happen. And basically these, one after the other, there's these things that we've thought about. You need to do things a certain way, like that new idea. People need to need it, etc. And it's exactly the opposite of what works in real life business. And that's what I try to encourage people to understand is learn how to drive first. Right? You never learn how to drive in your dream car. You never are brought into a Ferrari and say, right, let's learn how to do this. But that's actually how people, I find, when they're starting with an online business, they think this is the one, this is my passion project, this is the one of my purpose in life. I'm like, no. This is not that. This is the one that teaches you how to learn how to drive. And once you've got that license, you know what? You can rent any car you want. You can buy the car if you deserve it later in life. But, you never want to start or certainly I find, by burning all your bridges and going all in on that first one, certainly from what I've seen over the years.
And how do you keep people accountable? Because a lot of people come and do these courses or they join academies and they go, yeah. And then as soon as the door shuts behind them, they disappear off. How do you get it in the blood?
That's actually like a critical question, because human behavior will basically show us again and again and again that you're always going to go back to your point of least resistance. And
Right.
certainly the same, I experienced it. And I was trying to crack that code because I hadn't ever found anything that fully worked for me. And I was speaking at an event in 2015 in Ireland, actually, and I was listening to Robin Sharma speaking at it, the guy who wrote The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And he was talking about habit, which I always had an interest in, but never to a huge degree. And he was saying, look, I'm going to tell you why most people fail when it comes to habits. They usually think it takes either 21 days or it takes 30 days, which was definitely the prevalent thought at the time. And then he said, well, there's this new study that came out in 2009 in a university in the UK that said it's a minimum of 66 days. And I remember thinking, interesting. So that next day I said, right, let's test this theory out. And I said, I'm going to do a habit tracking on myself. And I said, what will I pick? I said, I know, I'm going to pick jogging. And I know I'd been told, if you jog, you should take a break. Or if you exercise one day, you should exercise the next day. I said, yeah, that's kind of like an anti-habit. Let me try jogging every day. So I did. I set a minimum amount of time, 15 minutes per day. And here was where I got to creating what your question relates to. At the end of every day, I had this kind of journal I was filling in, and I created this new habit section. And at the end of day one, jogging was jogging day one. And I decided while I was jogging, I was also going to listen to audiobooks. So it was like books day one. So I wrote down day one. And then day two, day three, day four. But if you miss a day, I set the rules that it goes back to zero. You reset.
Ooh.
And St. Patrick's Day came about 10 days later. And I tell you, the day after it, I was
crawling.
And the last thing I wanted to do was go out and jog. And I remember going,
right,
I have to reset. I'll have to go back to zero. And I decided, no, I'm not. I'm going to go out there. And what normally would have taken me 15 minutes in that distance, I didn't get close that amount of time. But I did it. I did it because of the emotional blackmail I'd set for myself. And also as keeping yourself accountable, knowing that no one else is watching except you are watching. So moving forward to 60, I got really excited around day 66, day 67. I was like, oh my God, how did I know that it was a habit? What's going to change today when I come home from my jog? And nothing changed. And then even into the 70s, nothing changed. And I remember going, what the fuck, is Robin full of shit or what? And I went back and read the notes, and it said at least 66 days. And I was like, oh, well, like, how long is a piece of string? So I kept going because I had my emotional blackmail lined up. But then on day 88, came back from my jog, and I had this eureka moment, like a profound moment for me, because I came back, had my shower, and I feel different. I said, I feel different. What is this feeling? I was like, I have absolutely zero sense of accomplishment. I'm not happy that I went jogging. I'm not patting myself on the back. I remember I just sitting down with this. I said, there's something here. This is it. I know this is it. Let me think about it. And my mind suddenly went back to when like all of us did, when we were taught how to brush our teeth. Every night it was a huge celebration. Right? You made it. You did it. You didn't choke. You didn't choke on you only ate half of the toothpaste tonight, whatever it was, until suddenly it wasn't. Until suddenly it wasn't a family event. It wasn't this major. It was just what you did. I was like, that's what a habit is. And I'd never seen it before. I'd never read it before, even though I'd read the books on this topic. I said, that's the difference between reading and doing. And that's when I started this whole thing of, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become known as the habit person. And I started to set up these consecutive habits in all the areas of life, to find the best expert, see what they recommend, do it, see if it worked. And so that's how I started, not just holding myself accountable, but then when I showed it to like John Assaraf and John DeMartini, these guys I know from The Secret, they were like, oh my God, that's it. It's like, I can see why your students do so well, because you start each day by reminding yourself, where do you want to be in your relationships, your earnings, your TAO, your health, your investings, your networks, your knowledge, your fun at the end of this quarter? And that's tied to a bigger goal that you've set up at the start of the year for, let's say, 10 years' time. And then you have your habits underneath that, because the habits will make the goals automatic. So you pick these habits, and I kind of give them a segment of, for example, I gave up sugar for 6-7 years, Will. And I remember thinking, I've never met a person that could honestly tell me they could give up sugar for the rest of their lives. But at the same time, I've never met a person who can't give it up until midnight. And that was the whole point, is you only have to focus it. Just do it today. Tomorrow, let's just do it tomorrow. And the combination of those two things, so using your planner, reminding yourself of the goal, and just actually quickly writing it down every morning to remind yourself what I'm doing. And then the big one was this, actually. Years later, I decided, like, your smartphone, which is your greatest liability, you probably pick it up 100 to 200 times a day. So this becomes, the back of your phone becomes the most important piece of real estate in your life. So what I've encouraged people to do is buy a completely see-through cover for your phone. And on the top, I've printed out, written 5 years in advance from now, what I'm so happy having had achieved it in those rethink areas. And then on the bottom is looking forward for the next quarter, where I need to be by the end of this quarter that's going to get me to those 5-year goals. And it's funny how it goes back to that very first sale I ever made online, selling subconscious software on your goals. Ultimately, that's what I've ended up creating for people without having to be looking at the screen. It's actually flipping the phone around, that every time they pick it up, consciously or subconsciously, they're reminded, is this phone, what I'm about to do, does it take me closer or further away to my goals? And so I'm trying to hit people from every angle that I possibly can to really keep people on point and in tune.
And you don't have an addictive personality. You just have a system. You're not, are you, because like many people like can really focus and get that stuff done. But some of us,
I'm so glad you had it, because
the distraction.
They are in relationships, that point of rethink. That was one that just sat there on a silo for years. I was like, because I read like the love languages and all this stuff, and I was not getting any deeper. Like, I remember when my wife read that, she goes, why does anyone even need to read a book on that? Like, we know that as women, like, that's just obvious. And we're like, we've no clue as men. but you know, it wasn't the answer for her. So I found this amazing guy in Australia, Rory Kilmartin, who had dedicated 30 years of his life to archetypal relationships. And one particular, I won't get into it now today. We could maybe another time chat about it. But there's one particular type of person, which he calls like a foxy personality, where you cannot tie them down. Very slippery. They will not do what you ask them to do. And if you tell me to do something, I'm not going to do it. It just can't. It's just in my DNA. I'm all about freedom. And if you're dictating to me, you're a tyrant. So the irony behind this is, creatives like myself, we don't like timelines. We hate looking at crammed calendars because we think that's the opposite of freedom. But it's looking back, I can see why I put so much effort into time management, productivity tools, because through discipline, you get ultimate freedom. So it's actually been created around people who they know that even it's so crazy. Like, people, I don't know, Will, are you similar or not? But sometimes you won't do what you tell yourself to do because you've just given yourself an order. That's how much you hate orders, right? You won't even take the order from yourself. So I've been trying to build these systems in that will work for most people. But definitely there are these warrior types, wolf types, that they don't need to write anything down. They have an automatic to-do list, dopamine list that's just their automatic. They get up, they're on mission, they don't need it. But other people are the opposite and feel trapped by it. So that's why I wanted to create something that would cover all bases for people. And actually, that's actually one of my upcoming books is about that. And we use AI to use your personality traits to then adjust how the planner will work for you based on your personality type. Because I'm obsessed with this topic, because it really is. If you can just get focused on these small little habits every day, everything changes.
So the running habit is just by actually getting used to creating a habit could be a way of actually getting you going. So it doesn't have to be a mathematical or a professional or whatever, but you get into the mind that you realize that you can systemize things. Is that true?
I would say so, yes. It's building this confidence that you know that if you say, you know what, I'm going to do this, that you've proven. And like the crazy thing for me with health was I was jogging for 7 year and I had given up sugar and bread and cheese for 6 years. And I was 23% body fat. And I knew when I spoke on stage, when I was telling people, and I've been jogging for 2,300 days. They didn't believe me because I didn't look like someone. Once again, I was doing what the mainstream told you to do. Just exercise every day.
Right.
Just don't eat sugar. Just don't eat bread and cheese. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And I don't look like that. But I just knew I was one habit away. Like there was just some tweaking that I needed. So then I found what that was. And I ended up actually eating more, going to the gym less. And it was just different habits that I just stacked on top of those. And suddenly I was able to eat sugar and eat bread and eat cheese and all those things that I thought were the bad things. And so I just tested on me, because that's ultimately for me. I don't take anything at face value anymore, because it's whatever you think. Usually I say, just rethink that. It's generally whatever you've learned in mainstream media, or that you're told what to do and you don't get the results and you always feel guilty that there's something wrong about you. Actually, you're just one habit away. You've just got the wrong habit plugged in at the moment, but you have the confidence that you were able to keep that going, to swap something else in and just watch what happens.
This is where I kind of wish I had your wife on the other line, or your daughter, and ask, how is it living with somebody that can create this system?
Yeah.
But you seem to present it in a way that it's not like, I interviewed Steve Lillywhite, who produced U2 and Rolling Stones and stuff. And he was talking about, he became sober 30 odd years ago. And I said to him, how long have you been sober? And he said, today.
Yes.
And he broke it down into a human simplicity of, I'm a human. I am very, very simple. I just take it in small bite-sized chunks every day. I don't stand up with a grandeur. And you just seem to skip through life with this joyous passion of commitment to fun and enjoying where you're going, but also the results and the dedication to not only live it, but be a modern elder to share the wisdom so other people can. But how is it in your life holistically? If your missus was on here, would she be like, you know what? He eats ice cream every night in the basement. He doesn't tell everybody, and blah, 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 blah. How does it work in the real world?
Yeah. I certainly live in the real world. She would say it's really annoying. I know what she'd say. It's really annoying because, especially imagine like you're married to someone and that person in your life isn't touching sugar for 6 years, right? That's every dessert. That's every, how can you not feel guilty when you're, enjoying yours? And I think while it's annoying, I do think she probably appreciates I never, ever said, you should do this. Right? I never tried to encourage her to do it. Even she'll laugh at this, but like it was exactly a year ago, I got a photo shoot taken of me topless, basically, because I had cracked the health code and I was in the best shape of my life, and I 4% body fat. I literally looked like a magazine cover shape. I couldn't believe it myself. I was like, and the trainer said, take a photo shoot. I said, I don't want a photo shoot. He said, it will sell the book. I said, oh, okay, I want a photo shoot. So, and she didn't even come outside to look at she was like, yeah, whatever. She goes, that's just a sign of bad parenting, but you're kind of half joking. But, but it's, I do, like, she does know how balanced it all keeps me. Like we've a very, my eldest daughter, Jess, has got special needs. She's nonverbal. None of this is lost on me when I'm like an international speaker and she's fighting for a single word. And I see that with a whole different lens. I suppose being through what I've been through, and also she gets that too, right? There's no, I think most women agree, there's definitely no such thing as a perfect husband. They have to find something that's close enough to achieving all of their values, and because we all have our flaws, right? And I think the flaws that I have, while they may be obsessive in certain areas, I think they're well intentioned. Like it is, I'm always kind of testing on me to basically to be able to share it with others and kind of help elevate human potential somewhere in the world, that somebody will learn from whatever my short-term sacrifice is so that they can ultimately benefit from it.
And it's only our inner fear that is making us resent that somebody else is doing something, that if they're doing something and you're happy because you're doing it, good for you. Yeah. And that probably makes you a more balanced, caring father, business partner, life partner, etc. And I think sometimes we all get, you triggered a few things in me about my childhood, but then, looking at it in a different way. I think that's just beautiful that you can have the confidence and still remain as you are, extremely authentic and kind as a person, which is beautiful to see. You talked about this sort of philosophy or you touched on the element of being reborn in the past, and you said something about your daughter had mentioned something to you that had really struck you. Would you share that?
Yeah. So there's something kind of interesting that's emerged from us. I'm just going to pull something up here, actually.
I do keep waiting for you to press the wrong button on your treadmill and disappear backwards or something.
That would make a nice viral clip, actually. We should.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. Oh, so there we go. Could you do it for the podcast? Classic.
So a couple of things, really, I suppose. Sarah, my wife, has basically dedicated her, since Jess was born, and probably 1 year after that, has dedicated her career entirely to Jess. And a lot of the standard things. We got the vaccine, and suddenly she couldn't speak anymore, and all the stuff that you could get really angry and annoyed and frustrated and about. But you have to rise above that, and you have to just think everybody in that process was doing the best that they could with the knowledge they have. Like I've done my whole life, until you realize, inappropriate knowledge, but. So it's like, okay, there's a reason, I certainly think, why all these things happen in your life. And one of the things that Sarah discovered was this, a spelling, very simple, like basically a piece of plastic with the alphabet on it. And it was been found that some children with autism were nonverbal. Honestly, now most parents, this is the reality, that have this situation, fully believe that child is incapable of let's say if they're 9 or 10, they think they have like a 2-year-old, basically, because that's how they portray themselves. And then Sarah, through a lot of research, was realizing this isn't the case. Actually, it's actually quite the opposite. So this spelling board, basically the issue that my daughter has is that she doesn't have full control of her limbs. So it's extremely, it's a big fight for her to be able to point at a particular letter, right? So we started this process with her maybe when she was 6. I think she was the youngest in the world at the time when she started it. And fortunately, we have the means to do this type of stuff. So now we're trying to figure out, how do you make this something that everyone can have without having the means?
Right.
We've a charity with that and stuff. But so it would take her maybe 30 seconds per letter with her entire body vibrating to get that letter out. And we were in New York with a Dr. Robert Malilo, an amazing man, and Nancy D'Erasmo, who was his spelling expert, who he had just brought in. And she'd never worked with anyone Jess's age. And it looked like Jess was struggling. And Sarah was like, you know what, let's just stop. And Nancy goes, why don't we just ask her? And one of the very first things she spelled out for us was, keep going.
Oh, amazing.
And it took maybe 6 minutes for that to come out. And I'm like, wow. And I think then the next thing that she spelled pretty much was, Nancy, what would you love to do or as a reward? And basically she spelled McDonald's. And I remember going, oh my God, I've never felt happier to bring a child to McDonald's, like, ever. But the profound moment for us was, we brought her minder over from Ireland the next time to meet Nancy. And Sarah and I were running late. We were getting a gift for a wedding. And when we came in, Jess was smiling, but the two ladies were crying. We're like, oh my God, what happened? And they were trying to explain what happened. And anyway, they gathered themselves, and Nancy said, well, she was asking Jess how she was. And Jess said, it's my birthday. And she said to Kira, is it her birthday? And we didn't know. And she goes, no, it's not her birthday. Her birthday's not for months or whatever. And Nancy said, like, Nancy knows that wasn't a typo, let's say, right? It takes so long to get the words out.
Yeah, of course.
Said, what do you mean, Jess, by today's your birthday? And she said, since I've learned to spell, I've been born again.
Oh, that's huge.
Huge. And even if that child isn't connected to you in any way, you suddenly realize how ungrateful we are, and how we use words like throwing them out and this and that to abuse, to not always, right? Not always negatively, but for one little girl somewhere in the world, like, just to be able to get those words out, whether it's vocally or otherwise, is a new life. And it just really doubled down for, actually, it goes back to a question you asked probably an hour ago. Why don't you just get up on the yacht? And because there's so much more meaningful things to be done. And in order for any of those things to be done, you can either go and get funding and go begging, or you go and you create the economy so you don't have to do that, so that you have as much money as you need to make these changes as quickly as possible. And not in a, I want to save the world type of way, or I want to connect myself to a charity because it's good for me. No, it's like a meaningful shift for somebody that, and just this week, she just spelled out something crazy. That's what I wanted to share. I was bringing up here. So she's 9 now, so this is 3 years later. And her teacher said, Jess, if you wanted to be a goddess, what would you be? Because at the end of the lessons, they just have this creative spelling for little bits that they can spell by themselves. And she says, I am goddess Jess of speechless creatures. I bring healing and hope to the voiceless. My spirit travels in the shape of dogs. I appear in human form in the color mauve with lots of tiny flowers in my nearly plaited hair. So it's just phenomenal, right? That you're seeing, and so far ahead of me, like in every way, this 9-year-old, it's just crazy how, you're sent these gifts to go and kind of mentor you and help you through what's important in life, what's meaningful. But so many of us, like Will, I mean, it's a big part of what we do. Tell me about your purpose. What do you do? And you're listening to people and you're, I can totally see how they think that's their purpose, or I can totally see how that's what they're aligning with for now. But you can kind of tell it's something they've, how would you say, battling with and trying to figure out. And then you've got a 9-year-old who, just by not speaking all the time, is able to have absolute clarity in her purpose in life. It's just phenomenal. There's just something we can all learn from that, from the simplicity of it all. Like, money and business and life doesn't come into it. It's just straight arrow, like through your heart, going, wow, she's got it nailed. Without any training, without anybody asking her how, she knows.
Yeah.
That's
just beautiful. And it's a real nod to the importance of the silence between the noise, where you get that moment to just let things speak instead of, like, I actually, when I come up to Jungle House here to do the podcast and the retreats, I don't listen to a podcast because it's my time off to listen to what my mind is thinking and where I need to go. And there's a number of times that I want to get up and move, but I do the same. I look at my 14-year-old daughter and, I look at her and sometimes you can see them. Children have that ability where the wisdom's in the eyes and they're just listening, but you can see the wisdom's in there and the chance and what you're doing with what's the charity called, by the way?
We kind of have a funny name on it at the moment called Angels Share. Like the piece
Angels Share
whiskey with the you can't.
Yeah.
So we haven't launched it online yet. Sarah's kind of biding her time
working on that.
With it, but and we, to be fair, now we think we'll probably wait a couple more years when Jess can be more involved herself and see this as something she can be dedicated to. But I'm more excited really for my wife for that, because she knows this calling, and anytime we've gone to see astrologers and we're into all that stuff later in life. I was a big skeptic at one point. It's funny that they've always seen that she's helping this daughter, like literally lifting her as part of her path. Now we do have a second daughter, just in case she's ever listening to this. We haven't forgotten you, Jenny, but it's like Jess has definitely carved out a path for us that's and it, for me, in the relationship side, like, I remember reading the first time when I came across that the divorce rate of couples who have one child with autism is 84%. Like, that's insane. So it's like there's an, and I can see why. I'd say it comes down to money, a lot of it. Because you just have to make a decision, can you afford it or not? And then what about the other kids? Are we going to put all our, etc. So it was like, it's definitely the next phase of where I'm going. And it's just, I don't know if you listen to the telepathy tapes or any of that stuff, but it's like unbelievable what's going on for these kids. They play at a different level to us. They're in a different plane of existence, and how they telepathically communicate to each other and how they can read your mind. All a whole other day's conversation. But it's quite phenomenal. But it's exciting too. It's like it really takes you to a whole other world of possibility of making it, like genuinely working with them to create what they're looking to get created, rather than thinking, hey, here's a solution for you. They have all the answers. It's just a case of helping them help us.
And it really symbolizes the importance, like your two daughters. I remember I interviewed Dean Carmen, who created the Segway, and I asked him, I said, how important was your brother in your life? And he said, fuck, no one's ever asked me that. But he was absolutely pivotal. And it's like with your two girls, there's the yin and the yang. It's like the work that we're doing and you're doing, but with the people that do different things. There's no right and wrong. There's listening and there's speech, and there's wisdom and there's acceptance. But if you will accept being in the celebration of two ways of doing and two ways of thinking, that's when you become whole. I feel, that's what makes it so exciting. My wife is a doctor in Oriental medicine and sees, I'm a Taurian from Burnley, I don't get it, but very different. But the beauty of the two worlds coming together to accept that there's real lift in that is that's a beautiful, beautiful thought. Love that kind of energy of how we can all work together. So tell me, I mean, I know the clock is against us, but I want your wisdom on, I think what you're doing with the Academy, and it's so needed and everything, but the world has changed so much. Just tell us a little bit about where you see and where the opportunities. You talked kindly about blockchain and cryptocurrencies and your feelings and your importance of where things should be going when we're looking on one side of the coin for the importance of income and money there, and then the importance of value and feeling, where we are the first time as a species ever threatened by something that is bigger than us, which is AI and technology. Where are you seeing things? Where's your finger on the pulse to give us guidance and sensitivity on this new economy, new world order, and changes? Big question. There's a lot there, and we could do another podcast on it. But
yeah, it is. And I mean, at the end of the day, it boils down to an individual. If you're an individual that's challenged with your finances on a day-to-day basis, you shouldn't even be using the word crypto or blockchain, because that's a gamble that you feel you're missing out on. It's like you need to bet the horse that you know is going to win, and that bet on yourself. You need to come back to the basics. And why I start with that is whatever that thing is in your life that is being neglected, you're disempowered in, you just ignore it, you just hope it's going to go away, or that your partner will manage it for you, it's going to keep coming back and slapping you in the face. Now, I don't mean this to be negative, but why I'm bringing that up is with AI, you're never going to have a greater opportunity, or certainly haven't had a greater opportunity, to have your own personal tutor who understands your every nuance, your every background, understands how you learn, how you can't learn, what you don't like, what you do like. That there's never been an excuse. Sorry, there's always been an excuse until now. And this could be the death of training programs like I delivered them within Rethink Academy. And I'm totally comfortable with that now. It's like, there's always more that people will want. But you now can literally, with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it might be, just start with one and become empowered in those areas, I think, that you've left beside. Like, you're going to need to learn about money. You're going to need to learn about AI. You should certainly be looking into your health. I know I don't need to tell people that, but that will allow you, I think, to start to carve out a path for yourself and give you a clearer distinction of what is that lane. That's the lane that you're meant to be in. What's interesting for me, Will, on this is kind of slight side note. I uploaded a load of information about myself into it and asked ChatGPT, what's my purpose in life? And I said, it's clear as day. Your purpose is to elevate human potential. And I hadn't written those lines or those words anywhere. But sometimes you need this external factor to just go, look, how have you not even noticed that? So I would play with AI to help yourself to get clarity on where it is you want to go. If you spend too much time in the media listening to what's going on right now and the whole level of anxiety around the place, it's not going to make you feel any better. So I'd look within. I would purposely take the rethink approach where I would say 5 years from now, let's just simplify this. Where do I want my relationships to be? 5 years from now, where do I want my earnings to be? 5 years from now in Tao, where do I want to be my spiritual connection? Where do I want to be health-wise? Where do I want to be investments-wise, networks-wise, knowledge-wise, and fun-wise? Regardless of everything else that's going on, if you don't have a target to aim at, you're in this state of limbo, lacking important, mission-based order. You're lost. And how many people do we meet every day that just seem lost or scrolling endlessly, comparing? So we need a bullseye that at least you can aim towards. At least you can start to have a framework by which you measure what success or fulfillment looks like for you. And then at least you've parameters that you can measure by. Here's where I want to go. Here's where I am. Let's not connect my happiness to getting there. Let's just be happy the fact that I'm on that journey. People have heard this over and over again, but sometimes it needs to be said. It's like you live a state of happiness or otherwise based on how you measure your reality versus how you think your life should be. There's only two things you can change there, the expectation or your reality. But at least you can change both of them immediately today and just have this sense of enjoyment. And there's a mentor I listened to for many, many years, an amazing guy called the Messenger, and he was like a channeler. And he used to always say, just ask yourself every day, what brings me my greatest joy? What brings me in my greatest joy? He said, you're never going to go too far wrong if you ask yourself that multiple times per day, because you're now tuning in to these micro decisions that you're making automatically, where you're doing avoidance and of pain and moving towards pleasure. So I know I'm not talking about AI and the economy, etc. But for most people, it's if you don't know where you're going, like all these things are just noise. There's no, you can't plug them in. They're tools. They're a toolkit for a job that you're not trained to do. But at least if you know where you're going and you've kind of got specific, for me, that was huge when I learned that you could bucket life into other things rather than just money and life and money and a partner and health. Because I always felt there was more. So if you have those parameters by which you're measuring where you're going, now these toolkits have a meaning for you. If you're going to then put in some crypto, maybe that's your investment basket. That's 5% of your portfolio, and you're not going to look at it for 5 years and you just see what happens. That's what I did with my crypto originally. Like Safidan's approach, the guy who wrote the Bitcoin standard.
Right.
And then you've got AI that can do pretty much anything. But if you don't ask it the right questions, if you don't know how to use it, it's just going to run you over too. So for me, it's use them in small amounts, listen to inspiring content rather than the news. One of the habits that maybe that's what I leave you with. The 4 habits that I suggest people do every day is 1, fill out your planner every day. And that starts with your goals in all 8 areas. The second habit is get out every morning outside for 15 minutes and just move. If you haven't ran in years, it doesn't matter. Just walk. While you're walking, put in your earbuds or whatever you use and listen to some experts speak about a topic that they are incredibly knowledgeable in. And whatever it might be, it doesn't have to be on money or business. It could be about spirituality. It could be about mindset. It could be about relationships. But allow that to infuse into you so you're smarter at the end of your walk than you were on the at the beginning of it. And the last one, I just say to people, if it's an online business thing that they're building, and whatever that might be for you for that fourth one, is just spend a minimum of 10 minutes a day on it, but every day. Every day. We have to build this habit that if you want to get consistent income every day, you got to put something out there every day. And it doesn't matter if, because what I find a lot, and I know we're shifting gears a lot here where I am, but a lot of people, when they want to do this new internet thing or have an online business, or they want to give up their job, they say, I'm going to spend an hour a day, which sounds reasonable until Tuesday arrives, right? And you're already 2 hours behind for that week. So now you say, well, okay, I'll do 3 hours on Wednesday. Then you give up on Wednesday, say, I'll take all of Saturday. And then Saturday comes and the mother-in-law arrives. And you give up. You just say it wasn't meant to be. But if you can just do tiny little amounts, minimum of 10 minutes, that consistency, just like all the other habits, over time, you realize, wow, anything I set my mind to, I can do. And it just moves you in that direction. So being patient for the big win, because they take longer, but they're so worth it, and disconnecting from having to be there at the end line before you get happy. Just be happy now, be fulfilled now. You can speak, you can talk, you're alive, you're listening. There's never been a better time to be alive. Focus on the things that are uplifting to you rather than the things that make you anxious about the past or stressed about the future. And you have the tools nowadays for free that would literally, you've got at your fingertip, that can guide you to finding an amazing future for yourself if you just decide to stay present and find out.
Epic. Love it. The human intelligence against the artificial we just got to lean on that, right? You just nailed it. So you are gifting and helping and supporting with your businesses, but as a person all the time. We built this international network now with the Elevation Barn in 48 countries. How can we help you?
How can you help me? Doing what you love to do more, and do more of it. And don't be afraid to be yourself. It just does seem that the world is going in that direction of don't speak up, don't speak out, just comply. I'm not calling for a revolution, but what I'd love for people to do is, if they were to listen to anything I said, is start with a couple of simple habits per day in an area that you're feeling weak in, and start tracking it daily. And whatever you use whatever you need, a diary, but start tracking it. Have that emotional blackmail, because it's going to build up this habit muscle. And once you've got past 100 days or 200 days, feel free to reach out to me and just share your win, because these small little things are huge for people. And that's what I love to hear, is when you're not expecting it and suddenly somebody sends you an email about, okay, I signed up for your program to do this about money, but you know what actually happened? I lost like 40 pounds. And just because of that walking thing. And I was like, oh, wow, imagine if you'd actually Done the money thing. But that was way more important for that person to get their health aligned, for example. So, no, I don't really want anything for me, but thank you for asking. But what I do love is just for people to go and just take some of this stuff and implement it, rather than going, oh, that was interesting, and never doing anything about it, because then it's just noise, unfortunately.
Yeah. And where is the best place to find you, Paul, for those out there?
Yeah, so I'm, ironically, as a social media guy, I don't really do much on there, but you can certainly find me there on Instagram. I'm RETHINK HQ. On Twitter, I'm just my name, Paul O. Mahoney, and our company is rethinkacademy.com.
Awesome.
But the best thing to do is, if anything resonated today, just send us an email and say, hey, Paul mentioned something about kids' money program or health program, whatever it is. Like we cater for most people. And I'm hoping to have a book on all of those areas in life. We've written 9 books at this stage. So it's easy for people just to pick them up and have a browse through.
And will we see you back in Bali sometime soon? Are you on the cards?
I hope so. I'm planning to do a New York Times bestselling tour, fingers crossed, in the next year, with an upcoming book with a movie coming out with it. But I can't share what it's called yet while the trademarks are being registered. But that would be the plan, is hopefully to do that and have something meaningful that I can focus people on and say, right, do this, read this, and go implement it. But I can't wait to get back. My God, I really love being there.
Well, hopefully look us up before you get here, and we'll catch back up again. But thank you so much for your generosity of your time today, for sharing that wisdom and all the thoughts. It really has filled me and will fill up so many other people. And thank you. And good luck with it all. because we need people like you. We need what you're doing. And I hope everything goes brilliantly for your wife as well with her new foundation. That's spectacular to support many other little girls and boys out there.
Yeah, well, thank you, Will. And likewise, I certainly want to share your podcast with the Rethink Academy people. I know they'll enjoy it.
Excellent. All right. Safe travels into the day. I know it's the start over there. And I look forward to keeping in touch and doing more good stuff together in the world.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.